Hey, so hello to all of you out in the hive, to all you busy bees out there. As promised, I would start at 7 o'clock. It's a little bit after, but wanted to get this show on the road and go ahead and start with our prayer class and our live video for that. So I'm actually on my way home from work right now. Ended up going up a little longer than expected, so I'm not quite home yet, but anyway, thought we'd go ahead and get this show on the road and say hi. Hey Michelle, good to see ya. Thanks for tuning in. So it's a absolutely gorgeous evening down here in Charleston, and just kind of, I'm almost back. I'm just around the corner, so it's not like I'm that far off. So anyway, so today we're going to be talking, continuing on in our prayer class, and this is more of a practicum-based one, talking about how to create places or stations for prayer. Always good to look both ways before crossing the street, you know. Good safety, need to get home safe. So yes, here we go. Stations and places, spaces for prayer that invite prayer. And can we create them in our households and in our communities? And it's really interesting because a difference today that we've had from any other day, home safe and sound, than we've had from any other day is that I actually got to have the discussion with our in-person group and get their input before posting on the Hive. And so we'll be entering this discussion, this live discussion, with some input from the in-person group that met on Sunday morning. And so thinking of some places and opportunities to create an opening for prayer in our day. So whether it's in your congregation or in your household or maybe at a school, where can we create opportunities for prayer? And one of the stories that came to my mind about how this worked out was my senior year of seminary. That would have been fall of 2016 into spring of 2017. And so at that point in time, it was a particularly stressful time for our student body. You had the normal stress. You had students who were looking to move on to the kind of next phase of their approval process towards ministry. You had exams and final projects due. That's always a lot of stress. There was also added stress for the student body that I was in at seminary because our student body was looking to merge with another seminary. And so there were a number of students who were thinking about what was their next year of seminary going to look like. And then combined with the fact that if you look at the greater world situation and the nation as a whole, 2016 was a very contentious, stressful election process, that to say the least. And so with all of that going on and all the current events that were going on at the time, our student body was more stressed than I had ever seen in my time in seminary. So we were thinking about where's a way to address that stress. And so myself and another student that I worked with in the chapel, we decided to do a Vespers at the beginning of Advent, so the beginning of December, around places that you could pray on campus, creating stations for prayer on campus. And one of those stations that we found was in our classroom building, our main classroom building. It was at the into the staircase, every student who had to go to class was going to pass by this prayer station. And the main focus of that prayer station, it was actually it was a huge artwork sculpture. It's about 7 feet tall, and it was a cross. It was the crucifixion of Jesus, was the art installation. And we created a station around there where students could take index cards, very simple index cards, and yarn and markers, and write maybe a phrase or a word about their concerns, and then hang them on the cross. So in a way, taking that movement and giving their concern over to Christ for them. And it got an enormous response. It was more than we had anticipated, really. That we ran out of index cards, which really surprised us. But it turned out that in a way, that offered an anonymous means of lifting up prayer. And in some places, that anonymous means maybe you don't always want people to know what's going on in your life, but somehow something being anonymous can open up prayer in a whole new way. But we started seeing in a very visible way the footprint of prayer that our community needed, that our seminary community needed at that time. And then by being able to look at the petitions, members of our community realized that we had some similar petitions in common, that some of the concerns that were on our hearts and our minds were on the minds of others as well. And so we weren't alone in our concerns and alone in our worry and alone in our stress. And so what that ended up ultimately doing was opening up conversation, that we had seen a theme of petitions across that prayer station, and it opened up a conversation. We didn't have to name or pin a prayer petition to an individual, but we could name that concern was there. And so that prayer station became a very powerful part of the student life in the very final weeks of the semester. And so what ended up happening is we didn't expect this response. We had to figure out what to do with all those petitions, because it just seemed wrong at the end of the semester to take them and throw them away unceremoniously. So what we ended up doing is we had a service. We call it Longest Night. Sometimes it's called Blue Christmas, but the tradition around Longest Night or Blue Christmas is that it's actually a Christmas service or an Advent service leading up to Christmas of lament. And the theme of that service is that there is suffering, and we can lift up our sufferings and our concerns, and that we trust that God comes to us in those as well. It's a very powerful service for those who find the holidays to be a very difficult time, to find those holidays to be a challenge, because it seems like everyone is happy and joyous, but you might find it hard to be for various reasons, and that's okay, because you don't have to be happy in Christmas for God to be present for you in that holiday. You don't have to feel a certain way for God to show up, and that's okay. So it was in the midst of that kind of service, that service of lament, because a lot of the prayers and the petitions were laments of how long, oh Lord. It was in the midst of that we decided to do a liturgy around offering those petitions that had been gathered over the last few weeks, offering those petitions up in prayer. And then we, in the midst of that liturgy, burned them. And what I took away from that is just, if you offer a space, if you offer a place, that oftentimes people will respond. And in a way, it's like loosening a valve on someone's day and letting off a bit of stress. And so I think in my context that I'm in a congregation. We have a lot of traffic, a lot going on throughout the week, and certainly mostly or the greatest traffic on midweek, and traffic on Sunday mornings. But we also have visitors who come by throughout the week and that sort of thing. Where do we offer an outlet for others to lift up their petitions in prayer? So do we offer a very visible means for people to make like a footprint of prayer? If we think of different traditions, maybe it's in the Catholic Church of lighting candles, or maybe it's in keeping a prayer wall. That sometimes it can be powerful to have a place to offer prayer in a way that leaves a footprint. It bears testament to a population that has offered prayer, whether we've seen it ourselves or not, but that footprint is still there, and inviting people to include their prayers in that footprint. So this morning I offered up some questions to our in-person group, and it's something to consider. Maybe if you're creating a space for others in a faith community, or a faith community reaching out to a broader community, to offer prayer. So some of the questions include, how does the space that you offer reflect what the community believes? So say, for example, if you're offering a space, if you want to communicate that your community is welcoming and engaging, is the prayer space accessible? Do people know about it? Is it easy to get to? Is it visible? Maybe some other considerations are, what are the beliefs in your community? What are the values in your community? And does your space show that as well? And what are some ideas for that? How might the space itself shape the community's faith? One of the things that I loved in the space that I worshiped in seminary is that all the pieces of our worship space were movable. Some people, we don't have the opportunity to move all the things around in our worship space, maybe because of pews or chairs. We don't always get that opportunity, but I loved the fact that our space could be movable. And so maybe in the prayer space that you offer, could it shape someone's ideas around prayer? Maybe imagine if you're very young and you don't quite even have the words to express what you're experiencing, what would a prayer space tell you about prayer? Would it be a comfortable space, and it would tell you that prayer should be something that is natural? Is it a sparse space? Is it a busy space? What does that space tell you? And I think maybe that's a time to, I think, get in touch with your inner child as well. And tying in with what the community believes, is the space hospitable to persons of all ages and abilities as well? This is coming from a resource. I neglected to cite the resource, but this is coming from a resource. It's Hold in Prayer Around the Cross. And it's a resource that we use here at St. Matt's when thinking about midweek prayer, and it gives you some insight on setting up places for worship, but also places for prayer. Sorry about that aside. But anyway, will the space invite silence as well as song? And this is looking at a worship space, but I think of it in terms of a prayer space. Can that space invite a gamut of emotions? Can that space invite and handle different situations and states in which people approach prayer? So maybe another question could be, is the space prepared for lament or thanksgiving and Thanksgiving? Is it prepared for all of that? Maybe someone enters feeling celebratory and they want to sing and dance and praise in prayer. But maybe that space is set aside to be a gentle, quiet space for someone who's going through pain or suffering or lament. Does a prayer space make room for both of those things? What will have central place? In Christian faith, we might say, well, will the cross have central place? But if we're looking at all faiths, what will have central place in that place of prayer? What will be the focus in that place of prayer? And then how will people be gathered around that space to draw near for prayer? Are we inviting people into a place of prayer? Is it a place, again, that's visible and people might feel so emboldened to come up and pray? Is it a place that's sort of set aside and secluded, and we educate people and let them know that that resource is available? If we're creating a space for prayer, will people know that that's available? So a lot of different considerations to think of when considering how to create space for prayer. I think we definitely have to consider who a target audience is, and what is a tangible way that we can engage that audience, that we can engage people in the prayer as well. So there are some considerations. I'm looking ahead. There's some considerations around kind of the motions that you do, the tangible motions that go along with prayer, and possible motions, whether that be maybe lighting candles or pinning up prayers to a cross. We have symbols and objects around prayer and what those different symbols stand for, whether that's candles or whether that is incense. There's different things to kind of make this prayer have a visible, tangible footprint, that as you pray, you offer up some kind of tangible means of prayer. This morning, it was very interesting in our discussion. There were a lot of different ideas all over the place. And one of the neat observations that I had from our group is they noticed they wanted prayer to be in the midst of the people. The group said, prayer should be in the midst of the people. It should be noticeable. And people should have the opportunity to come by and see it and offer prayers. But we also noticed that the center of our activity as a congregation changes throughout the week. And so on Sunday mornings, before worship even begins, there's the thoroughfare that goes through our parish hall and our parish ed wing, and people that it's like Grand Central Station through one particular hallway of our facilities, and it's everybody heading off to different classes, and then when classes let out, heading over to worship. And this is a very busy place, and it's kind of the place where everyone gets the news that's happening around the congregation. It's where the announcements are all posted. And so it would make sense if people wanted to have a place kind of just off of that spot to be able to offer prayers, if we had some kind of prayer wall there for people to offer prayers. Well, during the week, that area of the church is often rather quiet. And there's other parts of the church. Really, our courtyard is more busy during the week. That's where maybe people visitors who are walking by on the sidewalk and want to come in and take a peek at our sanctuary, want to take a peek, and they kind of share where they're from and what drew them to come take a look inside. And there's also people who are coming by to the outreach center who want to stop by for some assistance or to have a conversation with someone. The center of the activity changes to the courtyard. And then in the middle of the week, and Wednesday, it's when we gather together for dinner together and worship, and so our sort of auditorium is more where the center of activity is happening, and that's where the community gathers. And so for our in-person community, it was important that prayer be where the community is gathered. And so we recognize that the heart of that activity by the community changes throughout the week. And so for us, it became more appropriate that our prayer station, whatever it is we come up with, and they're actually excitedly working on a tangible thing, is going to be hopefully movable so that it can move from place to place around the facilities of the church. So really interesting insight on how a community just kind of took that and ran with that observation and realized that that is something that needed to shape our tangible, visible footprint for church, or for prayer in a congregation, and in this case, a church. So a lot of exciting and interesting discussion around making tangible places for prayer and offering tangible places for prayer. We'll continue on having more discussion throughout the week, and it'll be interesting to talk more about maybe where places that you see in your community that prayer could be offered, and what are some considerations that really stuck out to you? What are some considerations that hit home with you and maybe you're carrying with you as you go on from watching this video? And I think another handy consideration, we've looked at how we can offer prayer and a prayer station and a place of prayer for a larger community, but maybe what are some ways that we can make prayer tangible for families? This would be a really neat topic to explore, is how can we teach maybe kids or teach just whole families together how to offer a prayer in very tangible ways. Maybe that is lighting a candle or making a little prayer station. Not to say that this is the only place and time that someone can pray, but to say that this is a place where we make that prayer footprint more visible. So hopefully you'll tune in throughout the week. Tune in to the prompts and tune in to our live chats as well, and hope you enjoyed this video and look forward to hearing from you throughout the week. And if you have any places of prayer that you've visited or you know well, or you've set up yourselves, would certainly love to hear from you and hear what it is that you've established as well. So look forward to hearing from you, and it's good to check in with all you busy bees. Take care. Bye.